Hi, and welcome back to the Brian Esco Show. So great to be with you. I lied to you last week, and I apologize about that. Last week, I said that I was done talking about Nietzsche. I said I'd given you my final remarks, but that's a lie. These are going to be my final remarks. There were two lectures left in the, let's see, 16 episodes. So, as I had mentioned, I'm on the Jordan Peterson Academy. I love it. I've listened to several lecture series so far, most of them not by Jordan Peterson himself. But recently, I've been listening to two Jordan Peterson lectures on Nietzsche, and they're amazing. And I've been sharing as I go. And so the way the academy is set up, it's an online college basically. Is that every lecture series is 8 lectures, and so Peterson did this course called Intro to Nietzsche. But being Jordan Peterson, he expounds and he really kind of goes into the depths, which is good, which is really helpful. He's an amazing thinker, an amazing teacher, and one of the side effects of that is he stretches out the material. So he had to end up doing so in that first Intro to Nietzsche class. What he intended to do was cover select passages from one of Nietzsche's books called Beyond Good and Evil. Remember, Nietzsche is a philosopher, so we're talking about morality and identity, beyond good and evil. What an amazing, tantalizing title. And so Peterson had to extend it into a second series because he was just doing too much explaining and too much going into detail. So um, last week when I recorded the podcast, I had like 3 or 4 lectures left, and I'm now finished. And so, like I said last week, I'm not going to share everything. I'm not going to try to just give you exactly what Jordan Peterson, that would be a tall task, one that I couldn't live up to. Nor do I want to try to give you an extremely detailed version that I could give. No, that's too much work. I'm really not here to be a philosophy professor, but I will share with you some things that stood out to me as I wrapped up that lecture series. But before I get into that, I have to mention this post. So Kathy Griffin, remember the comedian who I never had a problem with, you know, and it's and not like I have a personal problem with her because she decided to pretend to cut Trump's head off when he was president in his first term. I thought that was extremely distasteful, but you know, I don't really give a shit. It's not like I was a fan of hers, but whatever. I feel bad for her. She got booted off the what do you call it? New Year's Eve show with Anderson Cooper, and now it's Andy and Anderson, and they're fantastic. So sorry, Kathy. I know you're hurting a little bit in your career, and she kind of reached desperately, and it was very inappropriate when she did that fake decapitation. So she's kind of drowning in, I think, a little bit of what do you call that? FOMO, fear of missing out on being popular and famous, and she wants to have a commentary. And the reason I'm kind of attacking her is, well, listen, here's what she said. So I go on Instagram, as I do all the time, sharing my music videos and just, talking with friends. And if you go on Instagram, that they will often plug their version of Twitter, or X, which is called Threads. So you'll see these posts from time to time, and once in a while they catch my eye, and I'll click it, and they'll open up Threads. And I don't have any posts on Threads. I have no activity. So I see this post from Kathy Griffin on Threads. Serious question. When Jordan Peterson was kind of legitimized by the Rogan Bros, what was his grift? Like, what did they think he was worth listening to about? And perfect time for me to see that because I'm doing what I'm doing. So what I said, he is the preeminent mind for understanding Nietzsche and Jung. I'm just studying his work now. He has done more good for people than you will ever do. I'm curious. Why ask such a bitchy question? So well, maybe I got a response. I don't know, but I didn't look. That really was an interesting comment. It made me realize I didn't really know too much about Jordan Peterson a few years ago either. I wasn't a guy who read his 12 books, his 12 rules or maps of meaning. I was a fan of the clips that I saw of him, but I really didn't know. And now I know that among other things, and he has a wide range of experience academically and scientifically and um, clinically with his practices as a psychoanalyst and a therapist. I mean, he's probably done a lot of amazing things for his clients alone, but magnify that by the speeches he's giving. And so to answer her question, what was his grift? What did they think was worth listening to about? Well, as someone who is the preeminent mind in Nietzsche and Jung, what does that mean? when you put that together with all his work that he's done and what you know about him publicly, when you put it all together, who is Jordan Peterson? He's a guy who's really interested in helping men, particularly men, but not only men, but helping people, maybe particularly men, grow, become better, mature. In this age where toxic masculinity is the word is thrown around too frequently, and masculinity has become shunned, in this age of wokeism and excessive social justice and anti-white, anti-male narratives, here is a guy who is interpreting the stories of the Bible for the purposes of helping people learn from them and see them. And let's leave to the side whether Jordan Peterson believes in God and whether he thinks they're real. It doesn't matter. He's trying to use the word of God to help people. He's trying to use the thoughts of geniuses who have lived, like Jung, like Nietzsche, who are not necessarily all good, right? But geniuses nonetheless, powerful words of insight about the human mind to help people grow and change and deal with the suffering of life and come out on top. Make your bed. That's what he said, right? So Kathy Griffin might see Jordan Peterson as some defender of toxic masculinity, some promoter of fascism, because he's against the woke theories and the woke milieu. But that's not the case at all. He's an amazing guy. And so let me give you a final thought on his presentation about Nietzsche, because this is very relevant to Kathy's comment. So look, I mean, as we said before, Nietzsche essentially was the guy who said God is dead, objective morality is dead, that unifying narrative that kept people psychologically together is gone. So now what? Oh no, there could be nihilism. There could be nobody's right, so nothing matters. I think that's actually what nihilism means. Existentialism, the crisis of conflict, who's right? All these problems now that emerge when you lose this unifying narrative. And so is there a value? This is the question Nietzsche asked. Given that God is dead, given that objective morality, that unifying narrative is dead, is there a value set that transcends all the multiple value sets and unites us? And as Peterson said, Carl Jung chased that. This is not about Carl Jung, but FYI. Carl Jung was heavily influenced not only by Freud, but by Nietzsche. And by this question, is there a value set that transcends the multiple value sets and unites? Nietzsche thought it was the will to power. Nietzsche thought that unifying value that would emerge to solve the problem is the will to power. It's kind of a vague term. It essentially means the capacity to overcome and grow and become more creative and overcome and grow, for lack of a better description. That's what Nietzsche believed. He was really into strength and nobility and greatness. Nietzsche did tremendous weakness in Christianity because he thought it was a religion of meekness and slave mentality, morality. So whereas Nietzsche thought the new unifying value would be the will to power, Jordan Peterson, Miss Griffin, says, no, that's wrong. First of all, by the way, the Nazis and Hitler ran with that, and they took it to the darkest extreme, and the seeds were there, as Peterson mentions, but that wasn't Nietzsche's philosophy. Fascism wasn't Nietzsche's philosophy. Certainly anti-Semitism wasn't Nietzsche's philosophy. Weakness and meagerness wasn't, so you could say the Nazis certainly weren't that. Okay, so there's some influence there, but they warped Nietzschean philosophy because of Nietzsche's sister, her proclivity towards fascism. Terribly unfortunate. But Nietzsche thought it was the will to power that would unite us and keep us psychologically intact. Jordan Peterson says that's wrong. As much as he loves Nietzsche and admires him, he thinks he was fundamentally wrong in his final analysis. Jordan Peterson says voluntary self-sacrifice and is the unifying narrative, the unifying value. Now that sounds very Christian, and you might ask, if you know anything about Jordan Peterson, is he a Christian? And I happen to be pretty deep into Peterson at this point. I've seen a lot of videos. He doesn't like being cornered. He likes talking about it, but he talks about myth and story and God. And so try pinning down Jordan Peterson. I mean, I don't blame him. It's like, I'd love to have him on the podcast and talk to him about all this. But regardless of whether you think Jordan Peterson has conviction in Jesus Christ as God and Jesus Christ rose from the dead and all of that, he seems to have real conviction. My take on it is Jordan Peterson has definitely concluded that the Christ story is definitely the right one. Voluntary self-sacrifice. Jesus took on the sins of the world, right? So yeah, he says the Nazis chose wrong. Yes, strength and nobility, and we create our values. The strong man, not the weak man, the Uberman. That is the Superman who will rise up and create his own values. There's a lot of, oh my God, that could go very wrong, right? So Nietzsche was concerned about this war on merit. And this is where it all ties back to identity and identity politics and critical race theory and communism and equality. It's all perfectly relevant for this podcast. Nietzsche was very concerned about the war on merit. He believed, as I do, that every man, every human is born equal before the eyes of God. So equality under the law. But Nietzsche, I don't know if he was the first, but even back in the 19th century, he was writing about the fear of overextending that principle to the equality of outcomes. You can't make people equal in terms of material outcomes. People aren't the same. They're equal in the eyes of God, they're equal under the law, but they have different skills. Merit. He was making the merit argument. And he was making the argument that wokeism, that whatever you want to call it, this meager, the seeds of wokeism that existed at the time, the seeds of this social justice is fine, but the seeds of the excessive social justice, the seeds of the anti-white, the anti-male, the anti-merit narrative were there. And so Nietzsche had this amazing quote. I won't read it to you because what am I going to read? Every amazing quote that he had. You have to watch the Jordan Peterson lecture series, Intro to Nietzsche, and then further down the rabbit hole. I'm telling you, I hope I'm motivating you to do that. But Nietzsche had this amazing quote, this amazing belief, I guess, that suffering was integral to man. Without suffering, there is no growth. You have to be challenged. You have to be, if the best of you is not called out, or called forth, it won't be revealed. So he certainly wasn't a Buddhist. Buddhism says avoid suffering, right? Find the path away from suffering. Christianity says, perhaps, what does Christianity say about suffering? It says suffering, well, in Nietzsche's mind, it was a victim mentality. And it wasn't, in his mind, Christianity did not teach people to be great, to be bold, to seek suffering for the purpose of growth and overcoming in this life. So you got to grow. We shouldn't see ourselves as victims. We shouldn't worship pity and self-pity. Can you connect that? Gad Saad, the author of Suicidal Empathy? Gad Saad, now I understand, is echoing Nietzsche. Nietzsche was concerned about the worshiping of compassion, the suicidal nature of empathy gone too far. So you have suffering, but these are kind of separate points. I'm just kind of giving you everything. Suffering leads to necessity, which leads to transformation. Here's another bullet point. If we think of polytheism, multiple gods, to monotheism as a coalescence of psychological forces into one, into the human brain. That's interesting. Now, I believe in God, and I'm certainly in the last many years of my life, not more religious, but more God-fearing and God-believing than ever. But this is really persuasive for, the old atheist psychological perspective. Well, can we think of polytheism to monotheism as the drives, hunger, anger, sex, forming into one conscience, one human conscience, coalescing into one? Is that monotheism? It's very interesting. Nietzsche observed this coalescing of psychological forces from many into one and said that one, you got to identify that one. What is the one? It's the will to power. For Nietzsche, it was the will to power. The drive, the one drive is the drive, the will to power, to overcome, to grow, to express your creativity. Now, some people interpret that as to conquer. It's not that. It's way more sophisticated than that. It's not about material conquering. So Nietzsche thought it was the will to power, this unifying force. Jordan Peterson likes to say that the Abrahamic tradition thought that the unifying power was he says in the Abrahamic tradition, the idea of God, and this is kind of sacrilegious, I guess, the idea of God, because you're now saying, well, the idea, what is the story? What does God represent? That's what Peterson wants to do. The symbols, what do things represent? They're not literal. So for the purposes of this conversation, let's just put to the side whether God is real and this and that. We're talking about these ideas. Nietzsche thought the unifying force was the will to power. The Abrahamic tradition thought it was the unifying force is this call to adventure. Abraham, leave. You're an old man. Leave your land and go to a new land and be restrained by conscience. These are the points Jordan Peterson made. So you have the human mind developing over time, and you have humans trying to understand it. Whether or not God is real, this is all very fascinating. It all has to do with identity and philosophy and life, how to think about things. So the connection, I said I would talk about this. So what a contribution by Jordan Peterson to human thought when you really think about it, Kathy. For him to say, look, regardless of the validity or veracity of God and religion, isn't the story of voluntary self-sacrifice the right motif to live by, the right highest value? In a world where there are many religions and many objective moralities, cultures. Now, you might say, look, cultures are not equal, and there is a ranking of cultures. That's not even the point of this, though. The point of this particular statement is that Jordan Peterson says, in the world where we have all these competing values, perhaps the right one is the one where you strive and struggle, not for your own will to power purely, but you strive and struggle and overcome and grow and transform and become better and stronger and more capable for other people. Whoa. No big deal, Kathy Griffin, though. I'm sure you are much more, I'm sure you'll have a much more lasting legacy, put it that way. So that's Kathy Griffin, everybody. No, but this relationship between Nietzsche, Hitler, and Trump, I said, so as I'm learning this stuff, and I didn't go deep at all, okay? You got to watch the lectures. There's so much material. There's so much more. But I began to think to myself, there is this connection between Nietzsche, Hitler, and Trump. So what is it? So Nietzsche wanted you to live boldly. Don't live meekly. Chase those ghosts, man. Fight the fight. Live your life. Shoot your shot. Right? Create your own values. Live boldly despite not knowing what's going on in the world. Create your values. Make the world in your not make the world in your image maybe, but you know what I'm saying. Okay, well, Hitler did that, obviously, as mentioned previously, in a very horrific, warped way. But there's something extremely Nietzschean about the whole operation. You cannot deny it. The denial of the embrace of meritocracy, the rejection of this flattening. Nietzsche was very concerned about the flattening of the curve. Nietzsche had a quote. Okay, here's one quote, approximately, paraphrasing, that Peterson shared with us from Nietzsche. Nietzsche apparently said, all of human civilization is a detour to get to 6 or 7 great men. So, interested in greatness. So, be great. And so, obviously, as said already, the Nazis had an extremely dark and corrupted version of that. Trump, well, this seems to be a guy who creates his own values. This seems to be a guy who lives boldly, who embraces merit. And there are a lot of parallels to Hitler, to be honest, in terms of personality, in terms of style, in terms of leadership. There absolutely are. One or two key differences, though, that the far left would be wise to mention when they bring up comparisons. My goodness. So say what you want about Trump, but he is not a Nazi. He is not a murderer. He is not a genocidal maniac. Yeah. I think that's everything about Nietzsche for the purposes of what Peterson covered in those lectures. So that was really Beyond Good and Evil. It's just one book. Was that his greatest work? Maybe. Maybe that's why Peterson started with it. I don't know. But there is this concept, and it was actually not mentioned at all in any of the 16 lectures that I'm aware of from just doing some light reading on Nietzsche prior to the courses. And it's this concept of the eternal recurrence. Just a fun idea I wrote down. I thought I'd mention it. I think the idea behind this is Nietzsche said, here's a thought experiment. Live your life as if you were in Groundhog Day and you woke up every day and it's the same. How would you live your life if it was going to be the same every day? Live that way. Interesting, right? Interesting. So that's everything on Nietzsche. Now I'm going to move on to some other random topics and get the hell out of here because this is kind of, I don't want to say this is a filler episode. It's not a filler episode at all. But I'm looking forward to seeing the Odyssey tomorrow and then doing a review on that. That's probably going to take the bulk of the episode, I would imagine. So I'm just getting back into podcasting after 4 months off, so forgive me if things are a little scattered and all that. Next topic here. Let's get into some random stuff. So last week, remember I gave you some random, sad, weird stories about musicians. One, this guy, David, and then the death of Oliver Tree. Well, in the same theme, unfortunately, I have another one. I didn't know this band, Hers, Hers. They have a song, oh God, just type in Hers and you'll find it. All right, I'll find it for you. It's a really good song. And I forget where I came across the story that these guys had died tragically in a car accident a few years ago. But it's called What Once Was. Who knows how I came across it? Probably on TikTok, and I saw this video and they were saying, oh, I can't believe they died. And I go, what? More sad artistry? These guys, I think they were from the UK. Such a great sound, indie rock, just popping, rocking. Lighter, but very melodic. Super good, super good. I love the track, What Once Was. I go, damn, I dig these guys. Relatively young. I find out they were killed by a drunk driver in Texas while they were driving on tour a couple years ago. It's just the fragility of life, man. The gratitude that I have, that you must have too. I mean, guys, for our health, those of us who are healthy enough, have all these blessings in our life. I am so fucking blessed. I see stories like that and I go, people who created such amazing things and their lives were taken short. What they would have done, what more they would have done. This is what kills me. What more Oliver Tree would have done. What more these guys would have done. And on and on and on with all the other people we lost. This life is fucking brutal. I could go either way with the next two stories I have, two quick stories, because they're both related. I'll go with the much sadder one. Speaking of life and loss and all of that. I have a guy in my life, I won't get specific, an older man, wonderful guy, colleague and a friend of mine. I've been to their house, the warmest family, cool, great parents, great. They've raised two great kids. They got a grandbaby now. Super, the wife, super vivacious, super lovely. Just a terrific couple. And she's been suffering with Parkinson's for a few years now. They're not that old, 73, 75. And we've known that it's a sad struggle and she's been deteriorating. And she has decided that she's reached her limit of suffering and she's going to elect to, how do you say, end her life. And it's scheduled for the 15th of this month. Heavy. I've been over for dinner. I know the family dynamic. Wow. Just a disease, just robbed her of speaking and moving ability. Severe Parkinson's. Awful. So life, the fragility of life, guys. I don't know. Get out there and do it while you can. Don't be afraid to chase your dreams. I would say, yeah. Well, one day I'll riff on what advice I would give a young person. I'd be a really good person to give advice to young people because for so many years I languished, I was lost, and that's okay. But I had no drive. I wish I would have had more drive, not even more drive, more interest. I wish I would have pursued for the longest time. I just kind of played video games and laughed with my friends and fucked off, got high, and I'm trying to make up for it now. I went to law school. I'm studying philosophy. I'm doing this podcast. I'm trying to get out and get myself out there a little bit. But follow your dreams. If you don't have dreams, just do something. It's okay. Everything's okay. You doing nothing's okay too. But keep in the back of your mind that the clock does tick, and you don't want to use that as a fear. But the ride ends, guys, and it would be nice to find something in your life where it doesn't feel like work, and you're the whole cliche thing. But you got to work, and you do have to suffer, right? You got to transform. There's no instant reward. You got to go through the hero's journey. I love this stuff. So that's the horrible story about my friend, older gentleman. And I spoke to him about it the other day. I asked how she's doing, and he said, my wife is not well. I said, I know. But I said, I don't know what the latest is. What's the latest? And he told me. I go, wow. I said, and I mean, obviously he's a mess at home, I'm sure, but he seemed pretty well. Like he said, you know these things. It doesn't last forever when you get married. I go, wow, that's profound. That's profound. Okay, slightly related and much happier story. Speaking of the theme of music and death, I guess this is kind of the theme of the second half of the podcast. I never mentioned my guitar story because I haven't been podcasting. So 2 months ago, I haven't been playing guitar at all. I have my acoustic guitar, and I played every day obsessively from like 15 to 23. Then I moved to San Diego, started my new job. From probably 23 to 28, I played here and there a little bit, but a lot less than I had previously. And then when I went to law school at 28, I stopped playing guitar totally. And I'm 36. I picked up the guitar last November. It had been 8 fucking years since I played the guitar. Incomprehensible looking back on it. So I start playing guitar again, and I can change my strings on my acoustic guitar, but I didn't feel like it. I said, I'm a man now. I'm a working man. I got a little money. I'm gonna bring my guitar in. I felt like going to Guitar Center, so I brought my guitar in, one right back here. I said, string this puppy up for me, would you? And check it out and see if anything needs to be tuned up or whatever. So they said, okay. Next thing you know, I'm looking at guitars on the wall, and I had grown up mostly playing the acoustic, but playing my dad's Fernandez. It's a Fender copy, Fernandez Stratocaster, very good guitar, basically a Fender Stratocaster. Growing up, and he also gave me his Gibson SG, which is an amazing guitar, but I was not into that guitar. I was much more into the Fernandez Strat. And so that's the one I did in my room growing up in high school and a little bit into college. But I didn't bring those guitars out to me. Those were my dad's, and so they weren't mine. He bought this for me in 8th grade, by the way. It was a very nice gift. He's a musician. He's a classical composer. You Google Gary Escow. He's living he's in Nirvana, a state of Nirvana right now. Slight detour here. He just, so this guy, Phil Seltzer from the Emerson String Quartet, my dad has a relationship with him through, my dad's occasional writing for music magazines. And Phil likes my dad enough he invited him to commission a piece. He said, Gary, I'm doing a 250th celebration of America at some festival in Vermont because this Emerson String Quartet, which is apparently actually one of the most world-renowned string quartets in the entire world, we just retired. This is what I'm doing. Write me a piece, Gary Escow. And so my dad just got back from this festival in Greece. He was actually in Greece for 10 days. Then he went to Vermont, and his piece was performed, and he was interviewed in front of a panel. And it's like, he's living the dream. So my dad I could talk a lot more about that and my dad another time, and I will, because it all connects to who I am and how I see the world. good and bad. So, we'll pick up that thread another time. So I'm looking at guitars, and I swear to you, one caught my eye of all the, and I grabbed it. It's a $2,000 instrument, and I start playing on it, and I'm hooked. And it was like a lightning bolt. And I'm an impulse buyer. I'm known to be a bit of an impulse buyer. So I didn't go home with it, but I went back like a few times the next day, the following day. And I was like, okay, I think I'm going to get this guitar. Like everything about it is amazing to me. It was a Fender 75th anniversary Telecaster. They call it a Cabronita model. It's a hot rodded instrument, which means, I guess, no tone knob, just real simple. I guess hot rodding means kind of customizing it, making it look cool, but also simplifying it. And it's got these different pickups. So it's a very interesting, unique guitar. And I was captivated by it. So, and they had one of them, and it's a custom edition thing. So I said to the guy at Guitar Center, will you please hold this guitar for me? He goes, we don't really, okay, I'll hold it for you for 24 hours. So I was talking to my dad about it, that night, the next day. And my dad is a very responsible buyer. He says, do your research, wait, blah, blah, blah. But I'll come with you on Friday to Guitar Center and we'll look at it. Okay. So I called the guy at Guitar Center the next day on my lunch break. I called him. I said, dude, please, will you hold it for one more? Because they did a 24-hour hold for me. I said, give me one more day. I'm buying this guitar. I'm coming in with my dad tomorrow. He's a musician. He just wants to vet it with me. I'm buying this guitar. The guy wouldn't answer. I kept calling. I called every 5 minutes from noon to 1 p.m. on Thursday. I finally got another guy. I said, please hold it. He said, okay. I go next evening with my dad. I'm so excited. Go up to the guy. We sold your guitar yesterday. I'm so sorry we sold that guitar yesterday. I was totally in grief. I walked around the store. I was just like, I couldn't be mad at the guy. Like, it is what it is. At the end of the day, I could have bought the guitar. I would have had 45 days to return it. That's what I should have done. But I was so depressed, guys. I was really not in a good way. And my dad felt bad. And my dad said, I lost a guitar like that once. Yeah. I was like, oh, fuck, man. Do you know what this thing felt like under my hands? You know what I could have done as an artist in my own little world with this thing? So my dad starts looking around for like a consolation prize, and he really knows his stuff. So he takes a Gibson Les Paul from pre-57 model, meaning the pickups were the standard P90s, not the warm humbuckers that most people associate with Les Pauls. Different, but the better version, according to some guitarists. And so he pulled it off the wall, and I'm not a Gibson guy, but it was very different, 15 times heavier, all these controls, and my dad's like, if you ever explore with color and tone, those are good to have. I'm like, I don't care about that shit. This and that. He goes, you might one day. And I started playing. It felt good. It was just so different. And I was in such a weird mood, and I had some money to spend. It was similarly priced, a little more expensive, to be honest with you. I was like, fuck it. I'm going to buy this guitar. It was totally the wrong move. But I'm like, now I got to overcompensate with an impulse buy, because what am I going to let this guitar walk too? So they felt bad for me. So they took $500 off, and which is really nice. And it was the same price as the Fender Telecaster. And so I bought it, and whatever. And long story short, and this is, I guess the moral of the story is, wow, look how rich I am. No, look how lucky I am. And, I saved some money, and I don't spend much money, thank God. But what I ended up doing was I kept the Gibson Les Paul. It's in my closet right here. And I freaking ordered. I found out they did have 20 more. They had 20 more of the 75th anniversary Telecasters left nationwide. I ordered one. I got over my fear that it wouldn't be the same and it was going to be slightly different. It wouldn't be the way because the guitar guy, when he was looking at the one they had in store, he goes, oh yeah, this setup, I'm not going to lie to you, this is a 10 out of 10. I was like, oh my God, it's going to be slightly different. It's not going to be the same. Well, it's just the same. It's perfect. So now I have in my closet over here a little guitar collection I've got a Fender Telecaster, 75th anniversary Cabernita. I've got a Gibson Les Paul. Done. I'm done. That's my guitar collection. Maybe in 7 years I'll buy another guitar. But I'm very happy and I'm playing a lot. Not a lot, but I'm playing for like 5 minutes a day on average, I would say. 10 minutes a day on average. I'm not practicing, but I'm writing. I'm writing bits and pieces, and it's just so creative. It's so therapeutic. I love it. So, back doing that. So, go to my Instagram or my TikTok through the link in my bio if you want to check any of those clips out. But I'm having a lot of fun there. And lastly, to end the podcast, 2 random news stories that caught my eye. If you follow me on X, you know that I put out a little itinerary, and might not be the greatest episode of all time, but shit, I hit the itinerary. So the final 2 things on the list here are 2 random news stories that caught my eye. The first one is U.S. bans humanoid robots from China, citing unacceptable risks. This is through The Guardian. This is from The Guardian via Inkle. I use Inkle for a news aggregator. It's one of my news sources. So The Guardian via Inkle. So yeah, I mean, it's just interesting. Like, hey, we banned the cell phones. Of course, we're going to ban the humanoid robots. Just makes you think about the future and what's coming and all the challenges that come with that. And really, I mean, the technology and the power and the security risks. How do you with AI, with robotics, how do you deal with that? And hopefully, controls are going to develop, and it's just all going to work out. Hopefully, we don't get in a Skynet situation. But it's freaking wild. The times we're living in, guys, talking about real talk, more and more talks about alien life. I'm not talking microbes either. Extraterrestrial, UAPs, it's being mainstreamed. We got the age of AI and robotics. We are at the precipice of a new age. There's no question about it. There's no question about it. And so Nietzsche probably felt the same way. It probably began around that time. And we're still in it. We're still going through it. And we may be at the threshold. And so we got to choose wisely with our technology, with our thoughts. This is very much an interest of mine. So yeah, and then the second headline that caught my eye from the publication Reason via Inkle. The headline is Federal Judge Halts Minnesota's Prediction Market Ban, signaling other states' efforts might be illegal too. I didn't know that some states were trying to ban prediction markets like Kalshi and whatever the other one is, Polymarket. But that's just an interesting, I guess the point of that is with new technology and because prediction markets are a new kind of technology in a way, the legal side of things is very interesting. How do you regulate, or do you regulate AI, robotics, prediction markets? It's all very interesting, and it can tie back to what your political identity is. Are you a pure libertarian, where it's all about the individual, classical liberalism, individual rights, my rights end, your rights end, at the tip of my nose, you know what I mean? Like, you don't hurt me and I won't hurt you. Non-aggression principle. Beyond that, everything should be legal. I have a right as a sovereign to gamble on Donald Trump's speech tonight, to gamble on who's going to win the Super Bowl, to gamble on X, Y, and Z, to purchase a humanoid robot from China, maybe you could bring a non-aggression, we'd say, well, look, that humanoid robot might actually punch somebody else in the nose, so that's where you lose that right. Are you a conservative to where you think there should be government intervention to shape society according to your version of morality? It's a very different position than the classic libertarian. Are you a leftist where you think there should be tremendous government intervention for redistributing wealth and flattening out the differences between people and groups? Not a very Nietzschean philosophy at all. So these are the things that I'll continue to explore on the podcast. I think that's it for today, guys. Looking forward, as I said, to watching The Odyssey tomorrow and telling you all about it. As I said, I don't think it's necessarily woke just because you have non-traditional casting choices racially or gender. You could tell a non-woke story with a non-traditional casting choice. It seems like they may have done that. Or the non-traditional casting choices may not be integral to the story at all. The reviews have been pretty good. So I've heard amazing things about it. I can't wait to see it and tell you all about it. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.